Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. This is my first time in Denmark. I just arrived this morning from New York City. Um, and my book is called Behold the Dreamers. It's about an immigrant from Cameroon, which is my native country, and he comes to America hoping to get the American dream. And he gets a job as a chauffeur for a Lehman Brothers executive before Lehman Brothers collapses. This is in 2007. So I'm going to read just the beginning of the novel when this immigrant, is going to apply for this job as a chauffeur. And you get to see what is at stake for him, why it's important for him to get this job. Lord, behold the dreamers. He'd never been asked to wear a suit to a job interview, never been told to bring along a copy of his resume. He hadn't even owned a resume until the previous week when he'd gone to the library on 34th and Madison, and a volunteer career counselor had written one for him, detailed his work history to suggest he was a man of grand accomplishments. Farmer, responsible for making sure the town of Limbe looked beautiful and pristine. Dishwasher in Manhattan restaurant, in charge of ensuring patrons ate from clean and germ-free plates. Livery cab driver in the Bronx, responsible for making sure responsible for taking passengers safely from place to place. He'd never had to worry about whether his experience would be appropriate, whether his English would be perfect, whether he would succeed in coming across as intelligent enough. But today, dressed in the green double-breasted pinstripe suit he'd worn the day he entered America, his ability to impress a man he'd never met was all he could think about. Try as he might, he could do nothing but think about the questions he might be asked, the answers he would need to give, the way he would have to walk and talk and sit, the times he would need to speak or listen and not, the things he would have to say or not say, the response he would need to give if asked about his legal status in the country. His throat went dry, his palms moistened. Unable to reach for his handkerchief in the packed downtown subway, he wiped both palms on his pants. "Good morning, please," he said to the security guard in the lobby when he arrived at Lehman Brothers. "My name is Jende Jonga. I am here for Mr. Edwards, Mr. Clark Edwards." The guard, goateed and freckled, asked for his ID, which he quickly pulled out of his brown bifold wallet. The man took it, examined it front and back, looked up at his face, looked down at his suit, smiled, and asked if he was trying to become a stockbroker or something. Jende shook his head. "No," he replied without smiling back. "A chauffeur." "Ride on," the guard said as he handed him a visitor pass. "Good luck with that." This time Jende smiled. "Thank you, my brother," he said. "I really need all that good luck today." Alone in the elevator to the 28th floor, he inspected his fingernails. No death, thankfully. He adjusted his clip-on tie using the security mirror above his head, re-examined his teeth and found no visible remnants of the fried via plantains and beans he'd eaten for breakfast. He cleared his throat and wiped off whatever saliva had crusted on the sides of his lips. When the doors opened, he straightened his shoulders and introduced himself to the receptionist, who, after responding with a nod and a display of extraordinarily white teeth, made a phone call and asked him to follow her. They walked through an open space where young men in blue shirts sat in cubicles with multiple screens, down a corridor, past another open space of cluttered cubicles, and into a sunny office with a 4-panel glass window running from wall to wall and floor to ceiling. The 1,000 autumn-drenched trees and proud towers of Manhattan standing outside. For a second, his mouth fell open at the view outside, the likes of which he'd never seen, and the exquisiteness inside. There was a lounging section, black leather sofa, 2 black leather chairs, glass coffee table to his right, an executive desk, oval, cherry, black leather reclining chair for the executive in the center, and a wall unit, cherry, glass doors, white folders in 8 rows to his left, in front of which Clark Edwards, in a dark suit, was standing and feeding sheets of paper into a pull-out shredder. "Please, sir, good morning," Jende said, turning toward him and half bowing. "Have a seat," Clark said, without lifting his eyes from the shredder. Jende hurried to the armchair on the left. He pulled the resume from his folder and placed it in front of Clark's seat, careful not to disturb the layers of white papers and Wall Street journals strewn across the desk in a jumble. One of the journal pages, picking from beneath sheets of numbers and graphs, had the headline, "White's Great Hope, Barack Obama and the Dream of a Colorblind America." Gender leaned forward to read the story, fascinated as he was by the young, ambitious senator, but immediately sat upright when he remembered where he was, why he was there, what was about to happen. "Do you have any outstanding tickets you need to resolve?" Clark asked as he sat down. "No, sir," Gender replied. "And you haven't been in any serious accidents, right?" "No, Mr. Edwards." Clark picked up the resume from his desk, wrinkled and moist like the man whose history it held. His eyes remained on it for several seconds while Gender darted back and forth, from the Central Park treetops far beyond the window to the office wall lined with abstract paintings and portraits of white men wearing bow ties. He could feel bits of sweat rising out of his forehead. "Well, Gender," Clark said, putting the resume down and leaning back in his chair, "tell me about yourself." Gender perked up. This was a question he and his wife, Nanny, had discussed the previous night, the one they'd read about when they Googled the one question they ask at every job interview. They had spent an hour hunched over the cranky desktop, searching for the best answer, reading much too similar pieces of advice on the first 10 sites Google delivered, before deciding it would be best if Gender spoke of his strong character and dependability, and of how he had everything a busy executive like Mr. Edwards needed in a chauffeur. Nanny has suggested he also highlight his wonderful sense of humor, perhaps with a joke. After all, she had said, which Wall Street executive, after spending hours racking his brain on how to make money, wouldn't appreciate entering his car to find his chauffeur ready with a good joke? Gender had agreed and prepared an answer, a brief monologue which concluded with a joke about a cow at a supermarket. That should work very well, Nanny had said, and he had believed so too. But when he began to speak, he forgot his prepared answer. "Okay, sir," he said instead. "I live in Harlem with my wife and 6-year-old son, and I am from Cameroon in Central Africa, or West Africa, depends on who you ask. I am from a little town on the Atlantic Ocean called Limbe." "I see. Thank you, Mr. Edwards," he said, his voice quivering, unsure of what he was thankful for. "And what kind of papers do you have in this country?" "I have papers, sir," he blurted out, leaning forward and nodding repeatedly, goosebumps shooting up all over his body like black balls out of a cannon. I said, "What kind of papers?" "Oh, I am so sorry, sir. I have EAD. EAD, sir. That is what I have right now." "What's that supposed?" The BlackBerry on the desk buzzed. Clark quickly picked it up. "What does that mean?" he asked, looking down at the phone. "It means employment authorization documents, sir," Gender replied, shifting in his seat. Clark neither responded nor gestured. He kept his head down, his eyes on the smartphone, his soft-looking fingers jumping all over the keypad lightly and speedily, up, left, right, down. "It is a work permit, sir," Gender added. He looked at Clark's fingers, then his forehead, and his fingers again, uncertain of how else to obey the rules of eye contact when eyes were not available for contact. "It means I am allowed to work, sir, until I get my green card." Clark half nodded and continued typing. Gender looked out the window, hoping he wasn't sweating too profusely. "And how long will it take you to get this green card?" Clark asked as he put down the BlackBerry. "I just really don't know, sir. Immigration is slow, sir. Very funny how they work." "But you're in the country legally for the long term, correct?" "Oh, yes, sir," Gender said. He nodded repeatedly again, a pained smile on his face, his eyes unblinking. "I am very legal, sir. I just am still waiting for my green card." For a long second, Clark stared at Gender, his vacant green eyes giving no clue to his thoughts. Hot sweat was flowing down Gender's back, soaking the white shirt Nanny had bought for him from a street vendor on 125th Street. The desk phone rang. "Very well then," Clark said, picking up the phone, "as long as you're legal." Gender Jonga exhaled. The terror that had gripped his chest when Clark Edwards mentioned the word paper slowly loosened. He closed his eyes and offered thanks to a merciful being, Grateful half the truth was sufficient. What would he have said if Mr. Edwards had asked more questions? How would he have explained that his work permit and driver's license were valid only for as long as his asylum application was pending or approved? And that if his application were to be denied, all of his documents would become invalid and there would be no green card? How could he have possibly explained his asylum application? Would there have been a way to convince Mr. Edwards that he was an honest man, a very honest man actually, but one who was now telling 1,000 tales to immigration just so he could one day become an American citizen and live in this great nation forever? Thank you.